Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you everyone who's here. It's such a pleasure to be here. I kind of feel like the dog days of COVID are back with having a Zoom call with so many people here. And it's not like we have anything great to celebrate, but at least we're not in the situation we were in a few years ago. That said, there's a lot to discuss tonight and a lot of work ahead of those of us who are concerned about creating a wine industry that is safe and fair and provides upward mobility to everyone who works in it, starting with those frontline workers who are the vineyard workers. So thank you for being here again. Just to say a few quick words about the Vinguard, I realized a few days ago that it's actually our 10-year anniversary that the Vinguard is an entity. It became a nonprofit in 2020, but I started running off my big mouth about the sexism about 10 years ago. So I'm super proud of all the work we've done. We have several board members who are on this call, and I just want to say we wouldn't be where we are without you and with other people who are on the call today. So I just would like to acknowledge that. And we started out as an organization that was really focused on gender equity, but you can't address or try to fight one oppression without trying to fight all of them. And we feel that, especially with all the climatic abnormalities and catastrophes that we're dealing with now, we can only bring our planet into balance by also considering how farming and environmental policies impact vineyard workers. And we feel that it is our responsibility to provide safety and economic protections as well as paths for upward mobility. So that's just to kind of give you an idea of where the Vinguard is right now as part of and how this fits into the work we're doing. We are thrilled to partner with Lideras Campesinas, and I am going to turn it over now to Irene to discuss the amazing work they do and to start the panel.
Great. Thank you so much, Pamela, and thank you to the Vinguard for partnering with Lideras Campesinas. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Irene or Irene, and I'm a Director of Policy and Communications with Lideras Campesinas, which is a statewide network of women farm worker leaders. And so together, we've been collaborating statewide on various issues related to climate, environmental justice, climate change, and farm workers. And so partnering with the Vinguard has been wonderful. We did a panel in person in San Francisco, so this is sort of a continuation to that. This one, of course, is virtual, but soon, in a couple months, we hope to do another one in person. And I'm going to have Sabina read the mission of Líderes Campesinas, and she is from our Sonoma Napa chapter. ¿Estás presente, Sabina?
Sí. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es
Yes,
Sabina.
I'm here. Good afternoon. My name is Sabina Rafaela. I am a member of the Líderes Campesina chapter, Sonoma Napa, for the last 13 years, and I'm one of the founding members. The mission of Líderes Campesina is to fortify Líderes Campesina so that we can be the bridge that can achieve the changes that we want to see politically and socially and economically, and also to defend our human rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabina. Muchas gracias. I was going to just share a brief video of sort of to show you what Líderes Campesinas, what the work is of Líderes Campesinas. And so let me go ahead and share that, and then we'll continue on with the rest of the panel today. You can hear the sound?
Imagine female farm workers toiling under the hot California sun, working a 10-hour shift, earning less than $15 an hour. Imagine these very same women and girls suffering abuse and harassment. Over 65% of farm workers do not have health care. They experience food insecurity, suffer from health conditions directly related to their back-breaking work in the fields. But there is hope. My name is Suguel Lopez, and I am the Executive Director of Líderes Campesinas. the only statewide network of farm worker women and girls. We are a genuine, community-based organization made up of leaders and trusted messengers dedicated to ensuring our human rights. While California agriculture thrives at the hands of farm worker women, the basic needs of our communities continue to be unmet. Support will help us expand the roots of the vital structure we have created and plant the seeds of resilience for the future. Women strengthen communities. Stand with us and become part of this extraordinary journey.
All right, thank you. So that's just a little video to get us started. And again, welcome to everybody. And we're going to introduce our panel. Today, our panel is focused on listening to some of the testimonies, experiences of farm workers that work in the vineyards. And amongst our guests, we have José. Es presente, ¿verdad? ¿Está José? And
Hey,
Saida.
buenas tardes.
Hola,
Yes,
buenas.
I am here. Good afternoon. My name is José Ocampo.
Y también tenemos a Saida. We also have Saida. And Noé. And Hilda. So, si podrían encender sus cámaras, los que sí están. And as well, we have Diego, who is an organic farmer. And thank you so much, Diego, for joining us. So to have that perspective of an organic farmer who, practices high road practices as well with the workforce, we really appreciate having you here. And okay, hola Hilda. So, no se te escucha. Si puedes quitar el mudo. And
Or there we go. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. How is everyone doing? My name is Hilda Alba. I have been working in the fields for the past 10 years, and I love my work, but there's a lot of injustice. Right now, we will not have work because the picking season is going to be put off up until late September. So there's lots of things to talk about, but time flies.
gracias, Hilda. Y aquí vamos a hacer un par de preguntas. Voy a dejar que todos se presenten rapidito y digan en qué es lo que
Thank you so
trabajan.
much, Hilda. And I'm going to let everyone introduce yourselves and mention what you do. Of course, I work in the fields. My name is Hilda, and I've been working in the fields picking grapes for the past 10 years.
Excelente, gracias. José, adelante.
Okay, Jose, please go ahead. Hi, my name is Jose Ocampo. I work in the Yolo County, and I have been working 12 years as well, picking grapes.
I think Saida might not be fully connected in audio. Let's see. Creo que ya estás aquí. Si puedes quitar el mudo y solo decirnos de cuánto tiempo has
Okay, I
trabajado.
see, Saida.
No se te escucha, Saida. Creo que tienes que quitar el mudo. Pero si quieres, vamos a. How about if we hear a second just from Diego?
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, my name's Diego Roig. I farm vineyards throughout Sonoma County and Napa County. Number of different varieties all throughout Sonoma Valley and Napa Valley. And yeah, within an exclusive focus on organic farming and yeah, organic viticultural practices.
Thank you so much, Diego. Okay, Saida, ¿ya estás aquí presente? ¿O Noé?
Sí, voy a darle acceso a mi micrófono porque estamos en llamada. Él se encuentra en
Okay,
Oaxaca.
yes, he's here with me. He's in Oaxaca currently. He is a field worker and he was affected by pesticides. So Noé, please go ahead and introduce yourselves. Hi, my name is Noé Pimentel. and I worked in the fields for the past 20 years in Napa Valley, and I was affected by the pesticides. I wanted to stay, but I couldn't. I had to come back to Oaxaca. I was greatly affected because I had been working in the fields for so many years. Sorry that the audio is not the best. Okay, so that would be his introduction, but he will provide his testimony in a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we have met our panelists today who are going to share a bit more. We're going to the order of the agenda today is we're going to ask some questions here to our guests, and then we'll go into some questions and answers. And as well, we'll share a little bit of a brief overview of some of the work that our Sonoma Napa chapter has recently done regarding some research about workers' rights and farm workers, and then some resources regarding pesticide exposure and for farm workers. So the first question is, compañeros, voy a empezar con la primera pregunta.
Okay, I'm going to begin with my first question.
¿Se les ha pedido alguna vez que ustedes apliquen?
Okay, so have any of you ever been asked, or have you ever been assigned the role of applying pesticides? Let's begin with Hilda. Well, that's something that men do where I work. Women don't do that, and they do it by carrying a backpack or in the tractor, but women don't do that. And even if you haven't done this officially, Hilda, have you ever been exposed while you're working? Yes, of course. Whenever we see them spraying, we leave. It's very tough for us. You start feeling really sick, and we start feeling allergies. Other people have a bloody nose. And also, Eli Lopez was going to be here because she was affected during pregnancy. She lost a baby, and the next time around when she was pregnant, she stopped working when the pesticides were being sprayed. That's right, Hilda. Thank you. Elizabeth wasn't able to join us today. And as you say, hopefully we can hear her testimony in the future. Let's see, Jose. What about you? Have you ever had to apply pesticides? Can you please tell us a little bit about that experience? For how long? Yes, I have been working for the past 8 years applying pesticides on grass, but also on grapes. It would be pesticides and plaguicides. And Jose, when you were assigned this task, were you ever explained the risks that you would be facing by doing this? Yes, every year we are giving a training on these pesticides, plaguicides. And anytime that there's someone assigned to this role, this person is assigned. And they are explained what the risks are. What about clothing? Were you provided with a special clothing or equipment, protective equipment? They give you some glasses, a mask, a jumper. Sometimes you're required to wear different shoes. You're required to wear protective boots and gloves. What happens if you deny doing this type of work. Is that okay? Or if you feel like you're not comfortable that you want to take this on, what happens usually? Well, I think it's out of fear that you don't want to lose your job. So you kind of just continue doing what they tell you you have to do because you don't want to lose your job. So sometimes if you say no, they exclude you from the group or they give you less work. So it's not like they are forcing you to do this job, but at the same time, you don't have that privilege of saying no. Okay. Thank you, Jose. I'm going to pose the same questions to Noé. I know that Noé is not joining directly on the call. It's difficult to hear him, but he's probably going to try and call the job. But we want to ask him the same question. I work spraying pesticides in Napa Valley. For 20 years, I was working. It's really hard to hear, but he's saying sometimes it's really hard to say no to this type of job, and you feel like you may be out of work if you say no. So I would do it. Okay, thank you for that. And were you ever trained to spray these pesticides? Did they ever tell you about the risks to health? Yes, they gave us some training. They told us to wear gloves and a jumper, a mask, glasses, protective glasses. Okay, thank you, Noé. As far as I understand, you had an experience where you were greatly affected by pesticides. You didn't quite know what had happened. Can you please explain to us what happened, how you managed to find help, or if you didn't manage to find help, what happened? Well, I started feeling really dizzy while I was at work. I was looking for help. I was going to different doctors. They couldn't really help me out. And I was feeling really, really sick. I couldn't work. I would feel lots of allergies and headaches.
¿Y sintió usted que cuando fue al médico aquí en Estados Unidos entendieron lo que usted estaba pasando, los efectos, los síntomas de que estaba pues sufriendo, ¿no? ¿Sintió que le entendían o cómo reaccionaron?
Pues ellos me dijeron que si trabajaba con el azufre y con el rampa, le dije que sí, que trabajaba en el condado de Napa y que todo el día trabajaba con eso, pues todo eso les platiqué y me dijeron que podía hacer eso, pero no me dieron nada, yo estaba mal, pues yo
I was dizzy and I was doing that for about a month
como dije, no sé si hice bien o mal, y pues me vine
and
para Oaxaca, pues para México.
I came back to Oaxaca.
Empezaron a oír Irene que dice que no recibió ninguna ayuda y que cuando fue al médico realmente le dieron
When he went to the doctor,
citas o no lo atendían
his
como debería.
appointments were canceled. He wasn't treated like he should have been.
Y sí, eso es algo que pues
Yes, that's
Campesinas
something that Líderes Campesinas at the state level is working on so that there's more awareness with among the health professionals. A lot of times they sort of reject people. They're not valued. They're not giving the value over what they're saying. And to notice their symptoms. And he also mentioned that another barrier was not being able to speak English. Even if he had interpretation, he felt like what he was trying to get across was not there, and there was a lack of communication.
Rocío se puso en mudo.
Discúlpame. Y
Oh,
también
and
está diciendo, ¿no? Porque
he's
como
also
dice,
explaining
como
through
su pareja,
Rocio that
pues como vio que no lo atendían en tiempo y
he
forma,
saw that
decidió
he
regresarse a
wasn't
Oaxaca,
being
pues que de una o de otra
he wasn't
manera
receiving the care that he
necesita
needed, so
ayuda,
he
precisamente
decided to
porque
go
pues
back to
más de 20
Oaxaca.
años
And
poniéndolos
he
que
does
todavía
feel
no
like
logra
that
ponerlos en una
affected him.
posición
It,
pues
he worked doing that for about 20 years using a backpack, and work told him that that was not their fault, that nothing had happened to him there. And so he didn't receive any sort of support from the company he worked for.
¿O todavía no?
Sí, aquí estoy, Irene.
Yes, I'm here.
Excelente, Zaida. ¿Te gustaría presentarte?
Can you introduce yourself, Saida, and tell us how many years you've been working and where?
Sobre tu experiencia, si has
And a bit
trabajado
about your
cerca de
experience,
pesticidas,
if you've worked near pesticides or applying pesticides.
Pues soy Zaida Turcio y
My name is Sauda Tuxio.
de mi país.
I've worked for almost 12 years, ever since I arrived here, working with grapes. It's been about 7 years that I've been doing that. And I have been close to pesticides. We wear overalls and masks and goggles.
a ti o más que nada
To you or the other people that are actually using the pesticides? No, myself as well. Sometimes I'm in charge of overseeing when they're spraying, and so I also have to wear that so that I won't have contact with it, and I wear overalls and the mask and goggles. Saida, do you work in Yolo County? Yes, in Yolo County. Thank you. How are you paid? What are you paid? Has that changed? Do you feel like it's enough to pay for your expenses, right? Your food, your housing, to survive? And if you can explain a bit. Well, things are really expensive over there. You can't really survive between food and rent and the little bit that your family needs. It's not enough with what we're paid. That's typically what the companies do. Okay, so the pay is not fair because there's a lot of expenses between food and rent, and there's very little that he was able to send to his family in Mexico. And in the end, this leads to illness, and they're not properly compensated also because of their immigration status. And so that's another barrier. Yes, thank you, Noé. And you're an example of someone who had to flee basically from the dangers that you were facing. And so I'm really sorry that you've had to live through that, and you don't have the compensation that you're due, not just money, but healthcare, unemployment. And so we are here to continue to support you however we can. Thank you. Jose, can you explain a bit regarding income? Do you think it's fair wages, what you earn doing this type of work? Well, it's not fair wages. you make enough to survive day to day. In my case, you don't get paid very well working in the fields. I make about 2,500 a month. Rent is very expensive, groceries. So if you aren't able to go to work because your child is ill or you're ill, then you're having to think about how you're going to be able to pay your bills if you're out one day, your insurance, food, rent. Sometimes you have to go to work ill, or if an emergency happens, you don't want to deal with it because you don't have enough with the money you earn. Thank you, Jose. Saida, you're a mom, and you have a baby and you have other children. As a mom, going back to work and how Jose explained, 2,500 a month. Sometimes there's not a lot of work because of the heat and you have to go back home early. Maybe not so much in working in the grapes, but in other types of harvesting. Can you tell us how that impacts you? Well, it does affect you a bit, because your work hours go down. Um, so right now I'm getting my hours. For now, I'm getting 10, but when your hours go down, it does affect me a bit. And Hilda, are you able to say you get unemployment if something happens? Can you explain a bit about that? Maybe you can tell us about a bit about the difficulties regarding hours. Those of us who can't get unemployment, we have to save a bit, but we're not getting more than 8 hours, just 8 hours. And so you have to save for when you don't have. Usually it's only 2 or 3 weeks. This year they are going to lay us off a lot more because there was a lot of mildew that spread, and so there's not going to be as much work. And that was because of the rains. Or why did that happen? I think the rain, and it was very close to the grapes, but maybe the owners don't always understand that, so they lost about 5 different ranches. So we are going to be laid off a lot more. When does harvest start in Napa and Sonoma? I'm in Sonoma near Healdsburg. We start around mid-September or at the end of September. It's actually very behind. And during that time, you're going to work what? How many hours or days a week? When we're picking, it'll be at nighttime. Depends on what the winery wants, but you'll go in at night. But last year it was raining really hard and everybody wanted to leave. And our boss didn't want us to leave. He was almost crying, wanting us to stay. So I'd like to hear from Noé and Hilda regarding Sonoma, Napa. How have the fires affected you and the smoke? Knowing the pollution, the damage this leads to, coupled with the pesticides. Do you have any experiences that were really difficult? Where I was, yes. The fires reached the ranch where I was working, and so we were without work a long time. There was also some electricity lines that got caught up in that. And so we were laid off for several months. Did you have to work at any moment in dangerous situations? Yes. Well, the roads would be closed, and so you couldn't get there. So they would just suspend work. Thank you. Noé, can you share anything about that? Rocio, if you can unmute. Well, they laid us off for a time. We stopped working. And so we only got paid, for that 1 week.
No sé si alcanzaron a oír, dice que a él sí lo pararon
So,
solamente 2 semanas y que después, aunque hubiera humo, ellos tenían que
they
irse
only
porque
worked
pues
for
de
about
esa
2 weeks,
manera pues
but they needed to keep working.
perdían su trabajo, ¿verdad?
Otherwise, they
Entonces
could
dice
lose their job.
entonces dice que ellos sí, como que los incendios más fuertes y ya
They
después
only
pues
stopped
agarraron
during the
también
most
otro grupo
severe
ya
fires,
por
and
las
then
cenizas.
after that, even if there were ashes or smoke, they continued working. Yes, we know in Sonoma, there's an ag path that allows certain workers to go work so that there's not a loss of the harvest, or if they need to work with the livestock or other animals. I don't know if you've heard about that, Noe, and if you were one of those workers that go in those dangerous times, and you're paid hazard pay. Noe says that he did not know about that, and that he was not compensated with that.
Noé, entonces si quieres decir algo más, Noé.
No, pues es que, como digo, a veces los supervisores, los mayordomos, nos avientan al trabajo, pero pues ellos lo que quieren es sacar su trabajo y no saben la gente que caiga o no caiga, pues yo creo que los de arriba no saben nada.
Just what you're saying about, the foremans, the bosses that we have, they kind of force you to do this because they want to get the job done. And they also probably get a fee for that, and I think that's wrong.
Cansaron a escuchar eso, ¿verdad, Irene? Okay.
Gracias. Y pues antes de seguir con...
Okay, and now before we continue on, I think Hilda wants to share something, right? Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think that the wildfires wasn't something that affected us in the fields, but all the other workers too. I mean, not just field workers, but also, the people who work in restaurants and in other services. It was something that affected all throughout industries. That's right. These working conditions where, the air quality was not good, they were not receiving benefits, unemployment benefits, and it's something that makes agricultural workers vulnerable. And it's true, you're living in a community where there's other risks like the wildfires, something that affects the whole community. Before we continue on with Diego, because we would like to hear a little bit more from Diego about organic pesticides, but we continue on in California prohibiting these other chemicals that Lideras Campesinas and other organizations advocated a lot to prevent these chemicals being sprayed on produce that we eat. And we've also been working with other groups that advocate against pesticides so that we can create a map, a roadmap to find other alternatives to pesticides that are not so harmful and toxic to people. So before Diego talks to us a little bit more about this, I would like to hear from our panelists a little bit about, please tell us what's something that could help change your life. What's something that essential workers would need to have a change, a positive change in their lives? Hilda, go ahead. Well, just like you say, there needs to be a change of pesticide that's not harmful, toxic, that doesn't produce allergies. Thank you, Hilda. Noé, what kind of change would you mention that would improve the working conditions of workers? Well, they used to say that these were natural pesticides, and I was out there working, and they were very harmful. They say it doesn't affect people, but it really does. So you have to work because this is the only work you can get. And I think you're risking yourself, and it's something that affects you. There were organic pesticides being sprayed, but you can still feel this after effects even when pesticides are organic. So there has to be a proper working conditions for workers, for essential workers. They need to be treated like they deserve, as they deserve to be treated in a safe environment. Jose? Well, I would say that a change would be to improve the salaries, to control the pesticides. For us, a lot of the workers, we don't have unemployment benefits. If we miss one day of work, it really affects us. So if we could have sick days and unemployment benefits, that would be good, because we're not able to rest at any time. If we do, we're losing money all throughout the year. Thank you, Jose, for making those points. Saida, would you like to share anything with us? Just as Jose is saying, I think that if we could get unemployment benefits, that would be helpful, because when we don't have work, we don't have anything, any safety network. Thank you, Saida. We know that these are big challenges, and we really appreciate the essential work that you do, all the work you do, which means working from very early in the morning until very late at night. And so I would like to let you know that this partnership that we have now, there are people who work in the agricultural industry, who are small agricultures, small growers, and they want to collaborate and work together to improve these situations, so that also wine consumers can pay more attention to the type of wine that they buy, where it comes from, how workers are being treated. And so we are all working towards this, to improve all of these working conditions, and also so that we can have healthier wine and healthier food, so that when we eat, we're not consuming pesticides and all these chemicals. So with this, I would like to transition to Diego so that we can hear him out a little bit.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you all hear me fine? Great. Yeah, so, I'm going to talk a little bit today, and I'm going to try to keep it as brief as possible. There's been so many really wonderful comments that have been made, and important comments that I think we all need to take to heart, so we can better understand the situation that we're in. farming and agricultural product that we're all dependent on for our livelihood. We made a decision to only farm organically in our vineyards, because we felt that that pesticides, can contaminate the soil, the water, other plants in the environment. They also can kill a host of other organisms, including birds and fish, beneficial insects, non-target plants. But in addition to that, there's also this element of all of the workers who are being exposed on a daily basis to those synthetic chemicals that are being applied in the vineyard. As more and more research is coming out, we're starting to see that that this pesticide exposure amongst agricultural workers is leading to certain cancers and DNA damage, respiratory, metabolic effects, some neurological disorders, and I think that for so long the most important consideration, it seemed like, was just growing the best grapes and not caring about the environment that was around us. But I feel that there are so many alternatives now to synthetic pesticides that are extremely effective, and we can create an environment where we're not only growing the highest quality grapes, but we're also creating a safe work environment for all of the workers whose livelihood is dependent on this work in the vineyard. I think the most important thing is always educating yourself and demanding that that your superiors and supervisors are looking after you and are providing the necessary information at each of these vineyard sites where work is being performed. And despite the fact that we farm only organically, it doesn't mean, and I'll echo what someone said already, is that, or just because you farm organically, it doesn't mean that some of the pesticides can't cause allergies or have other impacts. So it's extremely important that whoever is going into a vineyard knows what has been applied in that vineyard and what the risks are with going into that vineyard. So absolutely, if you ever see someone spraying in a vineyard and someone's asking you to work in there, you absolutely have no obligation to ever work in an environment like that. Every organic pesticide and synthetic pesticide has a prescribed amount of time that you must wait before you can enter a vineyard again. I generally think that those times are minimums, and really we should be pushing for even more time before we go back in to the vineyard. I'll list off a few of the organic pesticides that are available. Sulfur is one of the most commonly used organic fungicides, and we as a company do not use sulfur in any of our vineyards. And the reason for that is that we were finding that many of, myself included, that many of the people who were working in our vineyards, even if we were following the 24-hour reentry period that's required, that many of us were having allergic reactions. And that was oftentimes respiratory, but also on our hands. Like if anyone was touching leaves or grapes that have had sulfur, had a recent sulfur application. I think like a classic example of an organic fungicide that also has that could have some negative impacts. But that is a very effective pesticide or fungicide, organic fungicide that's used, especially in warmer regions or at warmer times of the year, because it is very effective against powdery mildew. We predominantly use an oil that is a petroleum-based horticultural oil that has a much shorter reentry period. It's commonly referred to as stylet oil, but there's other names called Vista Clear and Pure Spray Green, and they're extremely effective. And the reentry interval is much shorter. It's only 4 hours. So if we spray in a vineyard, we won't go back into that vineyard that day, but we know that we're at least giving 24 hours, which means we have a much longer period that we're waiting to go back before we start working in that vineyard again. I think it's extremely important that even any fungicide that people are using, you should be checking and seeing if you're having a reaction or not, and speaking with your supervisor about any negative impacts that you're feeling. Some other fungicides that are commonly used are go by the names Regalia, Serenade, and Sonata. They're biological, more bacterial applications that are much less effective at controlling powdery mildew, but and they're generally used late season. They don't really have any chemicals in them, so those are also much safer fungicides that you could apply. You do have to balance out the effectiveness of the fungicide with what you're putting down. So it's always important to take that into consideration. There's many on the market. I'm not gonna lie, and there's honestly a lot of these there's just various companies that are all selling the same product. I think two of the other organic fungicides that I think everyone should be aware of that have been shown to have some problems in the field are copper and lime sulfur. These are both, again, approved for organic use in vineyards. Copper is mostly used for a different type of mildew called downy mildew, which we don't have very much of in California, but that is not it's a particularly harsh organic fungicide, and is one that has been shown to have negative downstream effects, which means that it can leach into the soil and then get into our drinking water. So you should, be asking questions about, why people are using these different fungicides. Lime sulfur is another one that's generally used once or twice a year before the growing season, but that one's also particularly harsh as well. It should really only be used in the worst cases when you had particularly bad mildew the year before. When you're looking at these fungicides, I think the most important thing to consider, and it was already said, but is changing your pesticide use so you're working more with pesticides that aren't causing allergies, and those pesticides exist, and there are organic alternatives that do exist. And then I think the other thing that's extremely important is not having a recipe for farming every single vineyard where you just apply a chemical or a fungicide every 7 to 14 days. Some vineyards you don't need to spray that often. Some vineyards you may only need to spray one time or no times at all. And I think that's a good way to reduce exposure for vineyard workers in the field, is to reduce our pesticide use. And it is possible to do, but it does require more thoughtful farming. And I feel that that in every case, if we're not just thinking about the grapes, but we're also thinking about everyone who's working in the field, then we start to actually think about ways to farm better and also to farm in a more healthy manner.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And again, thank you everyone on the panel too. So if you have a question, you can, in the reactions, just raise your hand if you have a question, or you could pop it into the chat as well. And I'll just take the questions, I guess, in order that I see them. But I actually have a question, so I'm going to start it off. I was wondering if vineyard workers are provided with educational opportunities to learn more about wine and other aspects of the wine industry.
And for the panelists, whoever would like to answer the
Whoever would
question.
like to speak, yeah.
Continuing education should be a huge part of any farming operation. Farming is not it can be very dangerous, and there's heavy machinery. There's, again, as we said, there's a lot of chemicals and different pesticides there's insects that we need to be aware of, and so there are classes that are ongoing throughout Napa and Sonoma, but it is something that I found is lacking in the industry. I think a lot of the crews that are going into vineyards don't have sufficient opportunities to attend these classes, and I think that making them aware and having organizations that make the workers aware of the opportunities that are available to them is really a crucial part of empowering this group and continuing to have them have a better understanding of why we're growing the grapes the way that we are.
I was just wondering if Jose or anyone else has been and Hilda like offered where they work, where they've said, hey, do you want to learn? Here's something about the grapes that you're growing, or like given a bottle of wine that's made from the same vineyard. Does that ever happen?
Noé dice que a ellos no les dieron nunca
Noé mentioned that they were never even provided an orientation. They've never tried a wine that was made with the grapes they harvest or any sort of business information or training. They do get classes about the types of grapes and the process and when they should be harvested. In my case, I've worked 12 years in YOLO, and we've never received any sort of orientation regarding the grapes, but people have given us cases of wine. We used to get one every year, but it's been about 4 years now that we have not gotten any cases of wine or anything. But orientation regarding the grapes, but we did get cases of wine that were.
This is a question that somebody actually emailed to me. They were wondering if any unions reached out to organize the workers, like any other unions.
No, yo no tengo ninguna pregunta.
No, está preguntando sobre los sindicatos.
Preguntas, ¿no?
No, nada de eso, Rocío, no me.
No, in the entire time that I've worked there, I never had any contact. In the 20 years, Noé mentioned that he didn't know about any sort of union for agricultural workers.
¿Han escuchado de algún sindicato para trabajadores?
Está uno, pero
How
no
about
recuerdo que incluso si no le pagan.
there is one that helps you get paid, but I don't remember. I think it's Jobs with Justice, maybe. They help you if you were not paid. They're not a union, but they are a pro-worker group. I mention it because there was a young woman who they did not want to pay them, and they helped. So they're not a union, but they do help in a similar way.
Muy bien. La UFW es un sindicato.
So UFW is a union that
El año pasado,
works with
las personas pueden votar
agricultural workers, and people can vote outside of their workplace to form a union. So that's opened up some doors. Similar to like yes, there's similar unions for other fields, but there's one, for example, UFW, Teamsters.
la UFCW. Hay varios, no tantos, pero algunos. También
There's several.
está preguntando aquí que si la unión es algo que los trabajadores quieren, el sindicato.
And so somebody's asking if unions are something that workers would be interested in. Sometimes the workers don't want anything like that. Silvia Santoyo wanted to go to a ranch where I was working, and the workers didn't want her to come. So it depends on the worker. Sometimes they don't want that sort of help. In where I work, there's never been a union, but we do have Lideras Campesinas, and they started going to our ranch about 2 years ago. And that's the only thing I've known in the time I've worked there has been, in the last 2 years.
Megan has a question, Megan Bell from Margins. What do workers do financially when they are laid off early and cannot get unemployment benefits? How do they cover their rent and food and other basic needs?
Pues ahora sí que navegando para acá, para allá, para sacar para la papa y la renta, porque a la familia, porque la verdad.
I had to do a lot of moving around because if it wasn't enough, I needed to figure out a way to be able to to obtain the money I needed, and especially to send home
No
to
sé si se
family.
alcanzaron a escuchar que dice Noé que normalmente ellos
So that was
tienen la
Noé. And
oportunidad de
so
hacer
normally
recuperación de
people have to
trabajo,
find another work option or put aside a little bit of money, like Hilda mentioned, to see about other options because, the bills don't wait. And the ranchers, once they have their harvest, they're not interested or concerned if people have enough money to cover their bills.
There's also a question here from Noe that he would like to know what he and field workers can do about secondary effects from pesticides and where they can go to get help.
Sí, creo que eso sería una buena transición para nuestro, pues, discusión.
That would be a good transition for our discussion to wrap up. I don't know, maybe this could be one of the last questions, and I can respond to that.
Sure.
So to respond, so what someone needs to do when they're exposed to pesticides is to contact the agricultural commissioner in their county. So we're focusing at Lideres Campesinas on the state level on a work group that includes the ag commissioners and the pesticide regulation department, because a lot of people don't know where to find help. So Uriel is going to include some links. There are resources available, and this is on our webpage. What's important is to report it to the ag commissioner in your county, and from there, they'll guide you on what to do and what to do about your complaint. Maybe follow up appointments. And there are groups like Lideres Campesinas to guide you and to be there with you if needed. But there are resources. I know you're not connected on Zoom right now, but we're gonna send you these links.
Aquí estamos para apoyar con eso.
And we are here to support you with that and connecting you with the ag commissioner. And I'm going to share in English. Noé is very thankful because he's felt very alone. And that's partly why he left, is in order to feel that support from his family. So thank you, Noé. What we saw during COVID is that a lot of barriers existed, language justice, and a lot of people don't realize about these resources. It's very sad that he had to leave the country out of fear and not feeling okay, but we are available to help.
Donde se ve un poquito más por la gente, pues, por los campesinos más que nada, porque no se tapan y al último, pues, nomás nada con uno, pues, y pues ya uno puede, pues,
It's good to know the things that are happening and how to take care of yourself specifically, because when you're working, you don't really have the time. It's important to take into account all the farm workers and to always follow up with the help that's being offered, to just not leave them alone, so that you can always be aware of all these processes that they're going through.
Pues gracias a ustedes, que creo que
Well, thank you, because I think that this is one of the reasons why we're being taken seriously.
Buenas tardes.
Hi, good afternoon.
Sí, soy Ana María.
My name is Ana Maria. I am with Lideras Campesina. I have a question about pesticides. There was an incident around 15 days ago out in the field. In the parking lot, we noticed that they were spraying pesticides. We think it was the place where we were going to go work. It was further down, but we were in the parking lot just kind of waiting for the bus. And once the bus picked us up, it took us to the workplace, which was further away from where they were spraying pesticides. Then they held a meeting and they let us know, or I actually asked if they could put up a sign when a spraying was happening, and they said, no, we don't have to do that because this is not actually a really bad pesticide. So there wasn't a need to place this sign with the sign of pesticides because they were saying that it wasn't actually toxic or it wasn't so bad. So I don't know. I mean, what's the minimum? What's the bar for deciding when the sign needs to go up that when they're spraying and when it's not?
I don't think there's a single pesticide that you can apply in a vineyard setting where people can be in the same vineyard at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's never an instance where other workers should be in the vineyard. Now maybe with if you're not spraying a pesticide, like if you're spraying like a fertilizer or nutrient or something like that, like the rules I think are different. But when it comes to pesticides and herbicides as well, like there's never an instance where you're allowed to be doing work in the vineyard as the application's happening.
And yeah, thank you, Diego. Another thing in regards to this is we have to also take into consideration that in various counties across California, there is the right to farm law where, if you were to purchase a property or a home in an area that's adjacent to a farm, that they still have that right to apply pesticides. And that's more for residents nearby, right? But definitely in terms of the workers, as Diego mentioned, there should never be pesticides being applied during the work hours. And I forget the exact span of time, but we all are also working statewide. Right now, there's a pilot for a pesticide alert system. There was a lot of controversy regarding this pesticide alert system, but it is now active as a pilot in specific counties like Ventura and Tulare counties, where now there's an alert that will go out. And the controversy was that people weren't getting the exact location of where these pesticides were being sprayed, but these are definitely, pesticides that are deemed to be toxic and dangerous. And so this alert system is meant to alert anyone that has subscribed to this texting alert and let them know that nearby in a vicinity of, I don't know how many miles, but that they are spraying. And so many advocates wanted the exact location. However, I think there was either complications or there was fear of protests coming to that field, right? And so that's still some work that's, continued to be worked on. But also in the next panel that we have, we will have some of our partners from regulatory agencies that could definitely answer more of these questions.
The idea behind doing these panels, and of course we want to do them in person as well, but is to let more people in the industry know what the conditions are for vineyard workers, pesticides, the wages, the dangers from wildfires. And the other side to that is that also we need to look at vineyard workers as people who are not just there picking grapes, but they're part of our industry and need to be treated with the proper respect as the rest of the industry and as people who have potential to go and do great things as well. So this is not going to be the last meeting. This is an ongoing, it's not even an ongoing project, it's ongoing work that we're going to do. And we hope that everyone who's joined us today will join us in the future as well. If you have any questions, please let us know. And I just really want to thank everyone Irene, I know that the back and forth sometimes with the different languages can be a little bit difficult, and you did a really great job. So thank you. And of course, we also have to thank our great interpreters as well for that. Of course, Diego, thank you so much for giving us some additional information on alternatives to pesticides and also the drawbacks even to using organic pesticides. Hilda, Jesse, Noe, and Seda, muchas gracias. That is about the extent of my Spanish, but I appreciate your being here. Thank you so much.